Greetings, my fellow freedom loving sovereign thinkers. Thank you for tuning in to the LL3 podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date is Saturday, May 23rd, 2020. Looks like the Memorial Day weekend. So make sure you pay homage to the fallen ones and defy all forms of tyranny at the same time. So, just take it back along the New River. There's people walking around a little bit. They're still doing the whole new the Sharia law light, wearing the mask at certain places. Talk about reopening and some people still having a little cow. A lot of cloak and daggering going on with President Trump, like him or not. But sometimes you know how things go. People have to throw more drama at you folks than accuracy. And there are times I am critical with the man as well. But it's nothing new. Even folks in the local levels need to learn how to wipe their own rear ends when they try to tell others how to comply with their lives. Censorship's on the rise as usual. I try to post some stuff pertaining to natural news. Got censored on Facebook, and of course Twitter goes disturbing information. Yeah, everyone gets offended now. It's like the sensitive level. Orwellian snowflakes are on the rise. Or saps as well. Trying to run our lives. Not surprised at all. A lot of us have been talking about this for a very long time. If you're critical, question, they consider you a dissident. Or a dissenter, a maverick, a terrorist, a tyrant. Because you're not one of those individuals that look to boost of tyranny or pull down your pants to get ahead in life. Even one news link talking about white supremacist groups are still have Facebook profiles on Facebook, and the information came from the Anti-Defamation League and the Southern Poverty Law Center, which I made a tweet stating the ADL and the SPLC are considered hate groups. And some folks are really sensitive on it. So if you're going to be prejudicial towards me, fill out the application to join the Ku Klux Klan because you're already qualified. But I don't get angry about this, folks, or inspired. People need to start doing their homework on those particular organizations because they're controlled opposition. Racism, bigotry is their business. That's how they make their money. But behind the curtains, they want to control all of us and how to contemplate. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go around supporting racial groups or separatist groups, whether it's the alt-right and the Ku Klux Klan or the Neo-Nazi Party of America, New Black Panther Party, Antifa, etc. Remember, they're all subversive. They're all subversive entities. I can go on and on and on, but I'll be digressing. So it's a little bit inspiration. Education is key. Knowledge is power. Ignorance is enslavement. Blatant ignorance. We all have our flaws. But one of the areas we always got to look at, this is getting deeper than what's going on. The Technocratic movement are trying to push it to the edge. People are expecting World War III to happen. They want to blame the Chinese. They want to blame the Americans and all that. But here's the thing: the order don't give a damn. They want to use those particular muscle nations to do their job. Even in the Chinese Communist Party, they have their huge infighting. Many of them don't want to be friends with the United States and have stronger relationships, but they're getting shut down. Same thing with Putin. Love him or not. He has his rough edges as well. He's infuriated, try to shut down the borders, and still things happen. Of COVID-19. People are getting sick. And remember, all this thing about Russia, because he shut down a lot of certain organizations that were connected with the global elite, the New World Order, etc. So this is why you got all these distractors trying to manipulate the masses. So defy the world of technocracy, because it equals tyranny. The bottom line is, folks, to make their one world government fully operative, they got to take away culture, heritage, and individualism. This is why they call it the war on terror, the war on the people. Not just within the states of America, the United States, worldwide. And if you talk about how great Canada is, move there. As I had to do it in Israel, move there. Don't tell me how to think, how I should operate, how I should maintain my intellect. I want to enhance myself, not stagnate. So the herd-conformed rhetoric is very unattractive in my realm. All right, enough the song and dance here. Speaking of freedom, Constitution and all that, decided to do, I think, like 4 articles here. You got a squirrel up on the tree. And this one here came from Bob Livingston's newsletter. Bob Livingston letter. And this one's entitled, "The Constitution Has Become Truman's History We Don't Know." It's from the man himself. As he writes here, several years ago on a history test given to 31,000 pupils, most fourth graders could not identify a picture of Abraham Lincoln or why he was important. Yeah, he was important because he was a great centralizer. That's according from the book, The Real Lincoln. Folks should read that. Most 8th graders could not identify an advantage American forces had in the Revolutionary War. Most 12th graders did not know why America entered World War II or that China was North Korea's ally in the Korean War. One of the questions on the test showed a poster put out by a committee to defend America by aiding the Allies in 1940 that depicted a boot with a huge swastika on its sole about to trample the Statue of Liberty and asked which country the boot represented. 4 countries were listed as possible answers, but majority of students failed to pick Germany. We're raising young people who are, by and large, historically illiterate. Historian David McCullough told the Wall Street Journal, "History textbooks are poorly written. Many texts have been made so politically correct as to be comic. Very minority characters that are currently fashionable are given considerable space, whereas people of major consequences, such as inventor Thomas Edison, are given very little space or none at all." Before I pursue here, just one moment, I'm going to do this for the time. One moment here, it's going to do a little. Okay, see what happens. Boom. All right, awesome. All right, so continue on here. I don't want to be interrupted if someone calls me, anything like that. I'm on my phone right now. And it says here, trendies and minorities have their sensibilities sensibilities massage in the new history, which is, says McClough, often taught in categories: women's history, African American history, environmental history. So many students have no sense of chronology, no idea of what followed what. Author, commentator, and former presidential candidate, what child has been told of that? Pat Buchanan wrote at the time, if generations coming out of our schools don't know our past, do not who we are or we have done as a people, how will they come to love America, refute her enemies, or lead her confidently? This ignorance of history is a plague that is leading America down to the road to ruin. Socialism and its related isms, communism and Marxism, which just 30 years ago was rightly considered a danger to America, has not just because an acceptable alternative, a growing number of today's youth, but is actually something many are striving toward. Few are the people today younger than 40 who appreciate the Constitution and the wisdom of the Founding Fathers. And fewer still are those who have ever read it, much less understand what it means and says. Any even smaller number knows that the tyranny of the British Empire the founders rejected and defeated is no less than the tyranny of our own government now imposes upon us. The result is an acceptance, even an embrace of growing police state in exchange for a life of government handouts. Noah Webster, who authored the first American textbook and dictionary, once said every child in America should be acquainted with his own country. He should read books that furnish him with ideas that will be useful to him in life and practice. As soon as he opens his lips, he should rehearse the history of his own country. Parents who expect their children to learn the real history in a government school are diluted. Damn right. Our true history is something that must be read and taught at home by both adults and children, that the knowledge should be vital to restoring the American Republic. The first step is to know and respect the Constitution, the law of the land, which should defend our liberty from the imperial presidency and our enabling Congress. Executive orders and so-called authorities who impose regulation through unconstitutional government edicts have usurped the Constitution and has legislation, both enacted in a matter that they are not enumerated under Article 1, Section 1, which says, all legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in the Congress of the United States, who shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. The result is endless war and growing tyranny. In an essay in the American Daily Advisor, Alexander Hamilton succinctly summed up how to best preserve our liberty. He wrote, If it be asked, what is the most sacred duty and the greatest source of security in a republic? The answer would be an inviolable respect for the Constitution and laws. The first growing out of the last, a sacred respect for the constitutional law is vital principle, the sustaining energy of free government. Is it easy to spot those of the elected class that don't hold an inviolable respect for the Constitution and laws? After what we have witnessed over the last few months, it should be recognizable that it is our duty as citizens to purge the government of them and elect a new class that does. Yeah, that goes to the people that talk about Ted Deutsch. Ted Deutsch was talking about tracking and tracing on people. Yes, he does have an Orwellian fetish that would make Adolf Hitler extremely proud. He couldn't be Jewish, not more than a Gino. He's just an example of the clowns in Congress. This is why we can't just complain, we got to take action. Notification is a great remedy, what Thomas Jefferson once said. These are legal wars, doesn't matter who's involved. If you go after the president because of certain wars, not Congress, you're a hypocrite. If you're gonna get rid of President Trump for signing, those helicopter money bills, and people in Congress that supported it, and you vote for them, you're a poser. Plain and simple. Your mainstream garbage media is not going to teach you this. All these stupid shows gotta take the initiative to do some reading. Yes, I know Facebook and Twitter, they're censoring the crap out of everybody, including Google with YouTube. You want that? You gotta say, oh yeah, we gotta get rid of these bastards, we gotta censor them. But if it happens to you, we're gonna sit there and go, oh well, you gotta be complaining the most. Yeah, if you do, and if you support other people being shadow banned, you're a fraud. We all have obligations, folks, including myself. We have these obligations. You're not numbers, not any demonites to them. They're servants. I say lawmakers or government officials. Call them servants. If everyone start using that term, they get offended, then it's good. Because the bottom line is this. When the people fear the government is tyranny, when the government fears people is freedom. Liberty is freedom plus morality. As long as you don't violate others or your environment, you shouldn't be dictated. Collective witch hunting for cowards. That's why some people get wigged out about these white supremacist groups on Facebook, when many of them could be shills for all we know. Provocateurs, plants, hire guns. The buzzwords. That term gets people wigged out. The boogeyman. Think for yourselves, my friends. And do your own homework. You're not going to get it from these subversified sites by any means. That's how we got to look at the world. And it's the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. So, next one here came from an activist post, but originally from the Sovereign. It's from Simon Black. The UN wants you to stop using these 14 offensive words and other weekly news straight out of 1984. Sovereign Man, are you ready for this week's absurdity? Here's our Friday roll-up of the most ridiculous stories from around the world that are threats to your liberty, risk to your prosperity, and on occasion inspiring poetic justice. The United Nations takes a page from 1984 with a list of offensive words. According to the United Nations, the word wife is apparently offensive to some people. So is husband. Well, you know what? Go back to your caves. Who cares what you think? Their reasoning, these words are not gender neutral. So to create a more equal world, the UN has published an initial list of 14 words they want you to stop using, as well as acceptable substitute. The word manpower is offensive, naturally because it relies based on man. And anything that has to do with a man is offensive and terrible in this new world of ours. So instead of manpower, the UN wants you to say workforce. Oh my goodness. I'll continue on here. Same with congressmen, though frankly the word Congress should be far more offensive than a man. But nevertheless, the UN wants you to say legislator. Yes, nanny UN, you corrupt puss bags that you are. Instead of husband or wife, the UN wants you to say spouse. It responds to this website somehow. Sovereign, gender, fluid, homo sapien doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. There's a tweet on that, so folks, go there, just laugh at them. Bunch of pieces of crap that they are. Oregon lockdown lifted for a few hours. A judge ruled that Oregon Governor Kate Brown's lockdown order could only go so far. Yes, go figure. Another tyrannical scum queen or transgender, whatever you want to call it, that thug, regardless of the person's gender or sexuality, etc. Okay? It says here, after 28 days, emergency decrees in Oregon require legislative approval. But Governor Brown does not receive that approval because the world revolves around Kate Brown or Oregon. So as a group of Oregon churches who were forced to close due to the shelter-in-place order sued the government, and the judge ruled in their favor. The entire state lockdown was ruled illegal, and the judge ordered that immediately be lifted. But that only lasted a few hours. Governor Brown immediately appealed the ruling and took it to the state's Supreme Court. How flamboyant. While the lower court's ruling wasn't overturned, the Supreme Court did cave to Governor Brown's emergency notion to keep the lockdown in place while the lawsuit continued. Of course, the governor could have just called the legislature to back to approve her lockdown order, or perhaps she was too afraid that the voters' representatives would take her newfound power away. It was safer bet to let the Supreme Court decide, since Governor Brown appointed 5 of 7 justices. Yeah, so read about that. Folks, read about it. What happened? You got 5 justices probably pulled down their pants for Kate Brown and gave him she's got a big triangle strap on. So, and go, give it to me, baby. Or governor. So I'll continue on here. This is what's going on. Connecticut hires $2 million reopening consultant. There was a lucrative new business opportunity to land a free consulting state and local governments about how to reopen their economies. How lucrative, you ask? Well, the state of Connecticut has hired a consulting company to advise them on how to reopen the state after lockdown ends. The state will pay a target of $2 million, which could mean it end up being more. But don't worry, says Connecticut governor, because the state will be reimbursed by the federal government. And why not? The Fed is printing trillions of dollars worth of magic money. Pew! Which is a measly $2 million paid consultants to tell politicians how to stop being dictators. Oh my goodness. It's simple. Read the state constitution, dummies. It's called RICO, baby. Yeah, how come I don't see Joe Biden, who's RICO Act's #1 fan, talking about this, right? New York tax revenue down $8 billion, or 68% compared to last April. Well, how weird, when you shut down the economy, somehow the tax revenue stops flowing. The tax revenue is down 68%, or almost $8 billion compared to last April. New York is facing a yearly budget gap of $13.3 billion. But New York did receive over $5 billion from the federal government's CARES Act, and the city is already whining for more federal money. Why did anyone ever work at will when we could have just been printing money this whole time? Of course. Go figure. There are, financial demigods. I love New York. We would lick the boots of tyranny. Exactly. Restaurants are starting to collect customer info for contact tracing. Many American cities are considering forcing restaurants to collect information from patrons to assist in contact tracing. Their way, if someone who visits the restaurant is diagnosed with coronavirus, authorities can contact people who may have been exposed. Customers must provide information like their name, phone number, address, or other contact information. This is already required in some places like Auckland, New Zealand, and has already turned creepy. One says she thought nothing of leaving her phone number, email address, and physical address at a Subway restaurant she visited. Then she received a Facebook message and an Instagram request and a text from a Subway staff member who wanted to take her on a date. She was especially concerned because her home address was also available to an overzealous man. And as creepy that is, this is just one aspect of the privacy issues. The government will also be able to track your whereabouts. And unlike the creepy man from Subway, the government won't let you ignore its advances. Let's see here. Kansas City Church is forced to keep records of attendees. It is not just restaurants being forced to collect information on customers. Churches in Kansas City, Missouri are now required to keep a list of church attendees. The way the state can look at the first contact tracing of someone from the church test positive for coronavirus. The rules require churches and synagogues to record names, contact information, and approximate entry, exit time of all customers who are on the premises for more than 10 minutes. It is not so deadly virus can erase all the most basic rights from assembly to religion where we're really free to begin with. There's some stories on there. It's from the Daily Mail. Well, I'll tell you one thing. J. Edgar Hoover, Fidel Castro, Adolf Hitler, Joseph Stalin, all these tyrannical scumbags are climaxing in their graves. Oh yeah. They love this stuff, man. And even George Herbert Walker Bush. What the new world order? Exactly. Jorge Herbert Walker Bush himself. So, the technocratic movement is in heat. That's why you gotta learn the lessons on September 11th, my friends. If not, you're just null and void in my realm. Not here to judge, but your actions and ethics are unmeritable. Always gotta fight for what's right. So, this next one here came from the FloridaBulldog.org. It's about Governor DeSantis. This is what Daniel Ducassi has to say. DeSantis bragged about a deal with law firm now at center of COVID-19 testing scandal. This is from the press conference on May 20th in Orlando. Governor DeSantis touted an $11 million COVID-19 test deal at a Texas-based lab now embroiled in controversy and facing questions about the reliability of its test. DeSantis, under pressure to ramp up testing while pushing reopen Florida, boasted at an April 22nd press conference that we have 2 contracts in place and the 2 new labs that increase our lab capacity by 18,000 samples per day. One of those firms was a Southwest Regional PCR of Lubbock, Texas, who does business as Microgen DX, headquartered in Orlando. The executive office of the governor has signed an $11 million contract the day before with the firm for COVID-19 diagnostic tests, $99 per test, $8,000 per day for 14 days. Less than a month later, however, the governor's office quietly canceled the contract amid question about Microgen DX's dependability. The firm made headlines after Altamont Springs-based Advent Health raised concerns on May 16th about the reliability of tens of thousands of lab tests and canceled its contract with the firm. On Thursday, Florida Today reported that Microgen DX is now under investigation by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Microgen DX has disputed Advent's claims and adamantly defended the reliability of its testing. Microgen DX contract not public. Oh, really? Could we say Article 1, Section 24 of the Florida Constitution? I'll continue on here. The Senate spokesman Cody McLeod wrote in an email to Florida Bulldog on May 7th that Microgen DX was one of the first 2 companies the governor was referring to at a press conference. Florida Bulldog requested a copy of the contract that day, but the governor's office has yet to provide it. Division of Emergency Management spokesman James Mahon said the state canceled its contract with the firm on May 15th, and there are no samples has been sent to Microgen DX for processing. The website on here is too on Twitter. Yeah, feel the hype, right? Microgen DX puts out on Twitter 2 days before Governor DeSantis announced Florida's deal with the company. As with any lab, we do our due diligence to ensure the company will be able to provide reliable services before sending any samples. Mahone started an email. After further interaction with this vendor, the division determined that the state could not be 100% confident in the results that would come from this vendor, or with the processing speed, which is critical for COVID-19 testing. Mahone did not immediately answer the question about whether the state has secured another lab firm to replace the testing Microgen DX was supposed to provide. Microgen DX CEO Rick Martin told Florida Bulldog in a phone interview that his firm never started any work under the state contract, which he said did not specify any requirement to refrigerate samples. He said the state asked him to first validate the use of a transport medium the state wanted to use for testing. But Martin said in his lab was so slammed with samples that it didn't have time for validation and figured the state officials would simply go with another provider, they insisted. They were very slow to act on it. He said the state's efforts to follow up on the contract. MicroGen-DX bid no deal. The contract was issued under authority of the governor's emergency executive order addressing the COVID-19 crisis. It's one of the dozens of emergency arrangements the state has made in recent weeks without any formal bidding process. Although medical services are generally exempt from competition solicitation under requirements under state law, a reporter asked DeSantis at a press conference on May 18th about the problem Advent Health was having with the lab firm. DeSantis said the samples need to be refrigerated and that the firm just let the samples be spoiled. A characterization of MicroGen-DX's Martin disputed. Despite the FDA's guidance to refrigerate COVID-19 test samples, he insists the samples are valid up to 30 days without refrigeration, even in Florida heat. He's also shot back at evidence saying his firm experienced problems due to flaws with how the hospital system was integrating patient data with the tests, resulting in thousands of tests that could be processed but had no patient information attached. That's what biggest. But Martin said the biggest struggle he has been securing additional equipment. All right. He said previously ordered to conduct testing. He said the firm has stockpiled much of what he needed, but complained that the Federal Defense Production Act has resulted in major suppliers canceling contracts with MicroGen-DX and the federal government's direction. The Defense Production Act has really hurt us, he said. Martin explained that the state wanted certain things in place, such as transport medium validation, before it started sending test samples to MicroGen-DX, but they were taking so long. By the time they were getting ready, I had problems with supplies. Contracts canceled. He said the state canceled his contracts with MicroGen-DX soon after the Advent canceled his contract, but also that the lab was so hammered with huge volumes of samples and short on supplies that if the state had actually tried to implement the contract, he would have told them he couldn't do it. However, he stood by the reliability and accuracy of his firm's testing and said he looks forward to the day of vindication after federal inspectors conduct any inquiries. Florida Today reported that Martin was indicted in 2017 for conspiracy and mail fraud related alleged to a healthcare kickback scheme involving another company, but that he was acquitted last year. The state has been under immense pressure for more testing as DeSantis has pushed forward his reporting effort. At the time, the two testing contracts DeSantis referred to on April 22nd represent administration's largest effort to boost testing, intended to double the state's capacity. At the same time, Florida signed a major testing deal with Indoor Services last week. Florida Boulder reported that Indoor CEO founder Brandon Beal pleaded guilty in Texas last year of 2 financial felonies. Wow. Indoor was a pass-through for a Washington-based lab. The state cut Indoor out of the testing portion of its contract worth $10.2 million, but still bought $2.2 million worth of testing supplies from the firm. The state's database shows, as part of the description of the Indoor contract, completed sample refrigeration not required. It is not clear what the governor's office is doing to vet the companies that has given multi-million-dollar, no big contracts, if anything at all. Mahone said state officials are handing out emergency contracts so fast that they don't have time to really check them out. Time is of the essence when securing these critical supplies for Floridians, and there are limited time does not allow the division to vet every company, executive leadership, or board of directors, Mahone said. Man, so I gotta laugh. This is really getting interesting here. really get a big kick out of this. See, a lot of like sticky fingers, are involved here, And even though Mahone is has been acquitted, so interesting there, because sometimes you always got to pay attention to these things. That's why how deep the things go, absolutely. And sometimes even DeSantis has his hands full. Yes, I can criticize him on a few things, but I'm not gonna just go and bombard him everything. But he has his moments too. I didn't vote for him. I see how his track record was as a congressman. Okay, during that time in District 2, I believe he represented. But a lot of schemes are going on, folks, and if you don't have a copy of the contract, that's public information. The people in that office better know what they're doing. If not, they're breaching their oath on fulfilling the constituents' best interest. So, yes, public information is public information regardless. So what you say, any defense mechanized rhetoric is null and void. Well. So, it's just really interesting, really fascinating with all these people. All this stuff is occurring. But you know what? They're all wearing no clothes. So we'll do one more here. Or two more here, excuse me. This one here actually came from Natural News. Came out yesterday. Mike Adams. Which Facebook censors anything pertaining to Mike Adams' websites, Brighteon and Natural News or whatever. Because remember, Facebook and Twitter, they called it obscene or offensive material. Please do not go to their community guidelines. But here's the thing we have to say here about breaking confirmation that President Trump is not controlled by Big Pharma and is completely opposed to coercive vaccine mandates. Today we bring you an important update and correction. I have previously voiced concerns about Trump promoting Big Pharma and the coronavirus, fearing that the White House has been taken over by death sentence con man Dr. Fauci and other Big Pharma operatives. I can confidently tell you that my fears were unfounded. President Trump has not given in to Big Pharma and the vaccine industry, and he actually pushed Fauci onto the stage in order to attract intense public scrutiny, and that has now exposed Fauci fraud for what really is. At the same time, Trump has taken other actions that are courageous and compelling. He has publicly mentioned he's taking hydrochloroquine and zinc, and being the first and only public official who has dared to mention a nutritional supplement as a preventive measure against the coronavirus. He has defunded the communist-run WHO and halted all future funding unless that corrupt organization undergoes radical reforms. I say get rid of them completely. Start trimming the fat. He has affirmed that coronavirus vaccine will not be mandatory, but only given by choice to those who want it. He has stated that the vaccine might never be available, that America will reopen with or without a vaccine, hinting that he does not make the reopening predicated on a vaccine. He has demanded that churches be allowed to reopen as critical infrastructure all across America. In many states, Walmart, abortion centers, and bars were allowed to open while churches were ordered to stay closed. And that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what your creed is, okay? Finally, just yesterday, he stated that even if there's a second wave of infections, he will not place America under a second lockdown. Instead, it will look like he'll hint at other strategies that can prevent infections, hospitalizations, and death. Perhaps zinc, vitamin D, wearing a mask in shared places. In summary, although my fears were grounded and honestly observed the actions involving Trump, his vaccine czar, and Dr. Fauci's influence at a White House, I have now learned from reliable sources that Trump is fully aware of the risk of vaccines, the dangers of big pharma and drug cartels, and the need to respect health freedom across America. It is a tremendous relief because Trump is our last hope to fight against the vaccine deep state and the evil death sentence establishment. Sadly, he's surrounded by evil corruption in Washington, D.C., and he's made some mistakes, especially in picking the wrong people who turned out to be traitors. Jeff Sessions, anyone? But from what I've learned, Trump is still fighting for humanity, and he hasn't gone over to the dark side as many of us had feared. I've offered more details on these revelations on this heartfelt video, which was really good. I'll always give him a token of appreciation, Mike Adams. Yeah, he makes his errors like everybody else, which is fine. Hey, even myself, I make my mistakes. I jump the gun. Well, good thing about it, folks, so you gotta remain vigilant on these elected servants, okay, including President Trump. It's all fairness. You can't just sit back and just leave. Just trust them completely. You gotta keep them on their toes. That's the bottom. That's plain and simple. Because remember, government means control of the mind. You got a bunch of hacks out there. They want to crucify them for everything. Please, and they're a bunch of habitual offenders. All you gotta do is look up their voting record. Self-explanatory. This is why the 2020 election is very interesting. Everyone thinks, oh, get rid of the president, we'll be all safe. Spare me the moment. Because you got a bunch of bureaucratic douchebags in there. You got some corrupt people in the House and the Senate, regardless of party. Their principles are heinous. And I love when they use this whole hydrochloric thing. I think it's awesome. Because I was listening to his interview with Dr. Ron Paul. Had one of the doctors on there from the Liberty Report. And and the doctor thought it was awesome. So, hey, like Donald Trump or not, I told everyone from the very beginning, when he was getting ready to get stalled in, expect a cloak and dagger extravaganza. So, yeah, it's like I said, oh, the country's never been so divided before. I go, well, all you got to do is look up Abraham Lincoln's administration. There's a lot of dark areas that really divide this nation, including the states as well. But politics as usual, right? They're all wearing no clothes, folks. So you know what? Don't get mad at these people. Ridicule them. I like to meet guys like Ted Deutsch, Deborah Wasserman-Schultz, and go, how's it feel being a corrupt gyno? You go, what's a gyno? A Jew in name only. Yeah, I can use that term. Doesn't make me anti-Semitic. Just an example. You got a bunch of clowns from both sides. Whatever's red or blue, folks, prepare to get screwed. The truth of the matter is, you gotta be vigilant. Never trust the government. That's our heritage, and may our contemporaries fulfill it. We're gonna do one more here. I'm gonna see what's been pretty long, I would say, right? Yeah. I'm gonna do one more here. And this one's in reference to technocracy. And it came out last week. I'm not so sure. But originally it was on technocracy. And I got this from David Icke. So, the 21st. Yeah, it came out on the 21st. Okay. Wait, no. No, it doesn't come on the 21st. My mistake. So we're just going to check this out and see what it has. Public demand for technocratic expertise rises in times of crisis. What does this mean for democracy? Independent experts have played a prominent role in the response of European governments to the COVID-19 outbreak, but while there appears to have been broad public support for involvement of experts in policy making during the crisis, are these potential implications for democracy? Hit the wrong button here. Sorry about that. Joining on a new book, Ari Burso presents 5 lessons learned from research on technocratic politics and the role of independent experts in democratic system. During the time of crisis, the role of independent experts has been at the center of the political response in nations around the world. Government have learned on scientific expertise, such as prominent role of Dr. Anthony Fauci, Director of National Institute of Allergies and Infectious Diseases. In the U.S. response to the pandemic, or Boris Johnson's repeated assurance that the British response plan was based on scientific evidence and expert advice. Citizens also want to see and hear from experts in times of crisis. In many cases, people would rather see independent experts taking decisions directly, bypassing partisan politicians. Many would also otherwise accept the importance of pluralist views in political debate and the efficiencies of democratic politics, argue that during times of crisis, the rule of democratic game can change. Under such conditions, they are now more interested in effective actions that would lead to the best outcomes rather in the unusual democratic processes. This change in attitudes can manifest itself as heightened support for the existing leadership, what is known as the rally around the flag effect. It can manifest as increased demands for a technocratic or national unity government and party politics. In some cases, has happened recently in Hungary. It can also manifest itself as an acceptance of authoritarian measures that effectively negates a country's democratic status. As a public health crisis unleashed by COVID-19 turns into an economic and political crisis, the role of independent expertise in democratic politics will become an important question. Once more, reigniting debate as to which experts we can trust, what their role should be in our democracies, and whether government can absolve responsibility by following scientific advice. How to get a shot of water here. So, in a recent book focused on the relationship between technocracy and democracy, we study the role of independent expertise in the political systems and assess what the effects is of technocratic politics on democracies around the world. We can draw together at least 5 key lessons from this research. 1. Independent experts are key parts of modern democratic systems, even if technocratic power is often described as a counterweight to democratic power. The political role of independent experts is legitimized through the specialized knowledge they possess and the neutral position they occupy, vice versa. Political conflict, independence, and scientific expertise allows technocrats to advocate for responsible governance, efficiency, and optimal outcomes that are an integral part of democratic political systems. 2. Technocratic expertise can be nonpartisan but not apolitical. The moment independent experts operate within politics, make political decisions, are involved in decision making, they become political actors. Political decisions are formulated to achieve specific goals and have important implications, often redistributive in nature. A review of all technocratic and technocrat-led governments in Europe by Marco Valsburzi show that the vast majority assume political power to achieve a specific set of goals or remit. These goals need to be transparent. The same applies to technocratic bodies such as European Central Bank, the enemies of freedom, the enemies of humanity, right? 2 studies of EU technocratic bodies presented in the book by Renaud van der Veer show that technocratic actors do show responsiveness to external demands. 3. False dichotomies caveat of independent expertise in politics. So it says here, the belief that there can only be a choice between correct decision of wrong is false dichotomy. It makes opposition to technocratic advice impossible to argue that one's against recommendation that is derived through other objective rationale and scientific analysis, then they must be wrong by default. This black or white view of the world is often shared Between those with technocratic and populist political attitudes, the difference is that the latter great moralises the dichotomy as one between good or evil. However, this masks the true nature of politics and scientific expertise. Firstly, the correct course of action depends on the goal set, and secondly, true scientific inquiry rests on proving and disproving hypotheses to advance knowledge. Debate among independent experts and the wider community regarding methods and goals is always necessary. 4. Technocratic expertise have a positive impact in many democracies. Oh, really? Study effect of technocratic politics within democratic systems show that most of the time technocrats are invited in a democratic politics to address shortcomings and failures. A study of portfolios of finance and social welfare in 13 European democracies between 1980 and 2010 by Despania Alexito shows that technocratic ministers are more successful than the partisan counterparts in passing legislative reforms that are deemed necessary by the administration but have a high political cost in the Latin American context. Eduardo Dargent shows evidence from Peru and Bolivia where technocratic actors often coexist with partisan politicians. However, the policies they inflate often tend to be closer to the concerns of the people than those by advanced elected politicians. It's more like advisors, okay? That's what I'm trying to say here. 5. People evaluate independent experts evaluate independent experts relative to partisan political actors and vice versa. Technocratic cabinets emerge in the presence of a crisis when the existing partisan actors are willing or unable to respond to the social, economic, or structural failures of the system. Similarly, citizen support for technocratic governance is strongly shaped by their trust in the political system and their evaluation of the system's democratic performance. The lower their trust in the political actors fail, the stronger their presence for independent experts. A study on the effects of a technocratic government opponent in European countries by Joshua Tucker and Jan Zielinski, shows that the experience of such a government does not underestimate citizen support for party-based democracy as long as the democratic cabinets that follow are perceived to battle corruption and govern effectively. Wow. It could be manipulative as well, folks. You gotta be very leery on these areas. This is what happens when you got politicians are in their bubble for all these years. They don't interact with their fellow constituents. Then you use advisors, and technocratic advisors can con the game. It's a form of foreign influence if you really look at it. And I don't mean foreign countries, but foreign influence, outsiders represent the people. So one of those areas we always gotta be leery of, folks. Vigilance has always been the key, and this is why you always gotta stick to your guns, keep them on their toes. And you know what? And that will be it. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, and something that's interesting you want to check out, whatever you do, please feel free to share your correspondences with decorum. In addition, I shall leave the footnotes of this podcast on my Spreaker page. And if you want to do a donation, we greatly appreciate it. Hit me at paypal.me/Loki Luck number 3. It's all together. But the number 3 is. Alright. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Till next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. and may your guardian spirits be with you.